We all know that taking a lot of hard and punishing backshots turns your legs to jello and blows out your hips. It's just not how you want to play Dragon Bal Sparking Zero, which is what we're talking about here, right? But don't worry, in this guide, I'm going to show you how to avoid taking backshots like a champ and how to defend in general. Let's kick things off with an important open secret you need to know, which is Ki is king in Sparking Zero. People often think about Ki as this offensive tool for your blasts and supers, but actually you need it on D as well, because in back and forth matches with similarly skilled players, you're gonna end up teleporting behind each other often, just like in a fictional Dragon Ball fight. So make sure you charge your Ki at every opportunity you get in a match, even if it's a small one. You're always gonna be in need of more Ki, and I want you going into every single match with the mindset of, I must have as much Ki as possible for both attack and defense. But did you know that there's a way to decrease your opponent's Ki and that there's an easier way to do it than what the game says? The game tells you to do something called Super Perception as attacks land so that you can trigger a Sonic Sway, which is a cool animation that dodges those attacks and burns your opponent's Ki. But the thing about Sonic Sways is that they're not easy to pull off, the timing on them can be pretty tight, but here's the thing, you can use block while Sonic Swaying or attempting to Sonic Sway. So when you're being rushed down, all you need to do is hold block, which is R1 or RB on standard controls, and as your opponent wails on you with their rush attacks, their little rush combo or combo opener, you try to tap circle or B as those hits land on you. If you do it right, you go into that cool animation where you're dodging all their attacks and you're burning their Ki, and then you can set up your own counter attacks. Sonic Sway is an amazing tool for getting out of trouble, but just also making your opponent's life miserable in general, because reducing their Ki means reducing their offensive and defensive capabilities. You can also set the AI behavior in training mode to basically attack you endlessly so you can practice all you want, because in the actual dedicated tutorial for the mechanic, it's not really that useful, to be honest. By the way, if you want to know more about perception in general, I covered that in my previous guide. I don't want to make this too long and repeat the same information, so link is in the description for that. Now, of course, Sonic Sway and Perception won't help you deal with the pounding those rough backshots can give you, but before we get to that, you need to know about something that's seemingly obvious but super important, especially if you're a new player. When you're close to your opponent, your basic movement slows down. You kind of magnetize to your opponent a little bit. Imagine a radius around them, and when you're within it, you sacrifice your general movement speed for agility. You can jump around side to side, you can teleport, do things like that, but if you need to go back to your kind of like default movement speed, you need to back away or just get away in general from the opponent. You can do that with all the different movement options I covered in my previous guide that's in the description. Again, don't want to repeat myself, but I just want to mention this because it's important to remember that the game plays differently when you're up close versus at a distance, and this could trip you up a little bit when you're new. Over time it becomes intuitive, but just keep that in mind if you're new to the game. Now then, I know you've been waiting for all these backshots, so let's talk about how you can use super counters to break them, and I'll give you a little super counter secret or tip just to make them a little bit easier. Super counters are the hardest thing in the game. They can counter most attacks, and you do them by hitting up and square at the same time or up and X on Xbox right as an attack lands on you. The timing is super tight and you're going to get wet trying to do these counters. Of course, I'm talking about how sweaty your armpits will be, not anything else. You're a pervert. Nope, you said that, you thought that, not me. Super counters cost nothing and they can be done when your opponent has you flipped around. So they are great for countering in general, but they're amazing for countering backshots. You can turn your opponent's backshots eventually into your own backshots. You're going to need to go into training mode and practice these a fair bit to get used to it over time, but let me tell you just like a little secret, little tip. If you hold up and just keep trying to mash square as you get pounded, super counters won't work. Each super counter needs to be its own clean input. So I think you might know where I'm going with this. The thing is, you're not going to be great at super counters right away. It might take you a really long time. So while you spend time practicing and getting better on the side, in real matches, you can also mash super counters in emergency situations as a hopefully get out of jail free card. This isn't guaranteed to work, but it's better than nothing. And really, if you're just getting dominated in a match, if you're getting, pushed down into the bed and you're struggling and your timing is all off, this could be helpful. The way you mash a super counter is just the same way you would normally do it, up and square at the same time. But if you're mashing it, just keep doing it over and over again during your opponent's combo. Again, to be clear, I'm not saying you should always be mashing super counters. I'm not saying that's going to make you a great player. It's not going to turn you into an amazing player by doing this. I'm just saying that if you spend time practicing them on the side, or while you're spending time practicing them on the side, you're just not going to be amazing at them from the get-go. So if you're in a desperate situation in a match and you're just like needing to do anything to stop the pounding, you can mash here and there and it will help at times. But in general, I highly recommend getting into training mode, spending quite a bit of time practicing super counters, because if you can master this technique, it's going to help you tremendously. It's already going to put you at an above average level just with that alone. Now remember before I said you need lots of ki always? Well, part of that is because Z counters will burn through ki quickly if you keep using them. A Z counter can be countered with a Z counter. Basically, it's just a matter of hitting guard right as the opponent attack lands, whether you're chilling or flying through the air. So when you get into those close and potentially sweaty matches, you and your opponent will be teleporting a lot, and often the winner of that teleport will simply be decided by the amount of ki, assuming you've practiced and gotten used to the mechanic over time. Same goes for your opponent. But again, ki is king, and Z counter teleporting can always be Z counter teleported. You also have revenge counters as a defensive option. Basically, you click in the right stick as you're being pounded, but they only work from the front and they cost 2 skill points. If you need to get out of jail with them, go for it, you can use it, but try to avoid relying on this mechanic if you can, because your opponent can use perception to revenge counter, so they can counter your counter with just one button, basically, causing you to lose resources for no real reason. And by the way, did you know that you can deflect beam attacks really easily? As long as you have 2 skill points, all you need to do is hold perception, which is circle or B, before the blast hits you, and you'll be golden. It's really just that simple to get rid of a Gallic gun or a Kamehameha or something like that. Now, another thing you need to know are your recovery options, and it's not quite defense, not quite offense, it's kind of like the transition in between. I cover this in great detail again in my ultimate guide, link is in the description. You can check that out, but in the meantime, let me know if you have any defensive questions in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and learned something new, be sure to, hit like, subscribe, all that good stuff. After all, we have to band together to defeat all of those powerful backshots.